Well, gentlemen, Vancouver FC gave the Whitecaps a fight. 18,000 in the house. Thomas Muller's getting 300 goal cakes. There's the four-peat. The shirts told the future. They were right, the Vancouver Whitecaps, to print those early. But my goodness, what an evening. Ryan Gauld's back. He's scoring goals. And when we think about next year in the TELUS Canadian Championship, with TFC and CF Montreal still near the bottom, is there any world in which we go into next year's tournament and not have the Vancouver Whitecaps as the heavy favorites for a five-peat? The road to the Voyageurs Cup has run through downtown Vancouver. Alex, do you see that changing?
No, no. I think the five-peat is going to be at the front of their mind because this cycle of the Vancouver Whitecaps isn't done. Like Thomas Muller, obviously he signed a half-season contract with an option for next year. I imagine things would have to go catastrophically wrong for them not to trigger that option. Ideally, you get a full season of Ryan Gauld this time, not this, just a bit at the start, just a bit at the end. Most of their players are locked up, long term. They still got room to add. Like, it's hard to think the Whitecaps will regress, from where they are. And when you look at the other teams, CF Montreal, what path towards contention do they have? They've, back-to-back eliminations at the end of Forge. They're a long ways away. Toronto FC, I think, can make a bit of noise. The Georgi Mihailovic signing is a step in the right direction. They're no longer losing football matches, although they're not winning them. So Toronto FC can make some noise, but the Whitecaps cruise through this year, and it's hard to think them doing anything but next year.
They will be the prohibitive favorites. If you were to give me $100 to place a bet on a team, I probably wouldn't do it on the Vancouver Whitecaps, though, because you wouldn't be getting perceived value. That's because there's so many different elements that come into play here, and football moves fast. The first element is the CONCACAF Champions Cup. They're going to be back in it next season from the get-go. The extensive fixture list this season into next season, oftentimes there is a knock-on effect. And with the injuries that transpired this season, really anything can happen. Something else to keep in mind, it is a World Cup year. What does that mean for participation of key players, especially the Canadian contingent? Ali Ahmed might move on. There could be other Canadian players involved in the Whitecaps. I mean, based upon their standing and how well their players have played, there's international participation, and that's absolutely a factor. And perhaps AGR can more react to this. Who will the Whitecaps lose between now and next season? I think that's the biggest thing. And yes, the recruitment has been great. There's room to add. Most certainly, there's trust in what Axel Schuster has done, and with good reason. But take Ali Ahmed out of that team. Is Sebastian Berhalter still going to be there? What about Kubas? Does he finally move on? This team could potentially look a lot different come next season. There's reason to question how close Toronto FC actually are. They have lots of room. They're going to have lots of flexibility to add. It's a huge offseason for Jason Hernandez and company, but they've shown progress here over the last 6 to 8 weeks that gives you reason to believe that they're going to be a much better team next year. CF Montreal, tell me who their manager is and what this rebuild is going to look like when it accelerates, and I could maybe start buying into that a little bit more. But on paper, where we stand here just a couple days after the most recent Voyageurs Cup win, 4, what's better than 4? A high five. Just, there's reason to believe that that's going to be the case. But AGR, how many Whitecaps players could potentially be out the door? And which would really change kind of the way this team looks.
Yeah, well, I think Ali Ahmed, I think he kind of almost hinted at it after the game. They're like, "Oh, so what are you thinking for next year?" And he's like, "Next year." But I think they can replace that, right? Like if they keep Jaden Nelson around for another year of development, they bring in another winger. I don't see Ali Ahmed. He would be a big loss, but he'll be replaceable. Sebastian Berhalter would be a huge loss, no doubt. He's got I think it's like a Irish passport or something of the sort. So I do wonder if a championship team will look at him, given, the infatuation they have with Americans in that league and how good he's been. But like they lost Pedro Vite partway through this year, and that was supposed to be a big blow. And they just kind of found a way to, all right, plug and play. Like that's where I think even if they're losing players, as long as they replace them, and Axel Schuster has shown out like, oh yeah, I lose a Vite, I'm going to bring in a Muller. Like what's the equivalent of Ahmed? You lose Ahmed, who are you going to bring in? Maybe he's going to bring in someone like Serge Gnabry, and then we laugh. No, I don't think that's actually going to happen, but you never know. It feels like the Whitecaps right now, they've figured out a bit of a system to keep them where they are, because this was supposed to be the peak year for them, and it feels like they've found a way to extend their window slightly with some of the movements they've made over the last 6 months.
So those are the champs. They're still basking in the glow of 2 cups in a single week, the Cascadia Cup and the Canadian Championship now. But how about the finalists? I know they are on the exact same level, and I actually do enjoy watching the Cascadian Cup matches, but I digress. Vancouver, the finalists. Martin Nash yesterday told me when we spoke to him, already thinking about Forge this weekend, that this was going to be a pivotal offseason for the club. How much do they spend? How much do they recruit? Because there is a very good chance, though it's not official yet, that the Whitecaps could be in CONCACAF Champions Cup next year. How, Gareth, do they take this momentum? The great performances like Tierno Ba, Matteo Campagna could go down the list. There were some ballers on the night. And take this project forward. Has Martin Nash done enough to stay the coach? Do they have higher ambitions of cracking into the top 5, making a run for multiple trophies next year? What are the Eagles?
They should. Lots of different variables here. Let's walk through. First of all, Vancouver FC are going to be significant Vancouver Whitecaps supporters here over the next 3 regular season games, because if the Whitecaps finish in the top 4 in the Supporter Shield race, then that Canadian Championship spot would then go to the Eagles, Vancouver FC, which would be quite the reward for what was a very memorable run to the final, and a game that they really did well for themselves as well. And I think that potentially changes things. It changes the way that the club is looked at, potentially players that they can recruit and bring in. That ownership group is trying to sell Pacific. That comes into the equation as well. What does Vancouver FC and Langley look like going forward? And most importantly, for on the field, do they bring Martin Nash back? That is a significant question. Yes, they have played much better under Martin Nash, and I'm actually surprised that there hasn't been more talk about maybe bringing him on in terms of like signing him to a permanent deal. I asked Martin Nash in the build up to, we did Adam in the build up to the game, saying, if you go out and win this, is there like a contract on your desk the next day? And he's like, no, that's just not how we're doing things. But I like it here and blah, blah, blah. Nothing seems, an assurity. So maybe they move on from Martin Nash. I don't know. Like, is that the right move? Martin Nash knows the community. He's got buy-in from the players. They've been much more well-organized. There's good reason to believe that he can be the guy that could take this team forward. But perhaps the ownership group is looking for something a little bit different out of their manager. That is not being made clear. We asked, and AGR, you were on that call as well, what they're looking for in their permanent or next manager. And it seemed to be open for conversation as to what that will actually look like. So you'll have to tap into the brain trust to see what they're actually looking for. But in terms of on the field, like the manager will go a long way to determining what the team will look like on the field. And even if they think that, yeah, maybe they could move on and bring something in different than Martin Nash, does that mean necessarily it will be better? So lots of risk, lots of variables to determine where they're going to be. But certainly if they are in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, the stakes go up, the notoriety and the awareness of the club goes up. And I think they need to get serious, now about what this project will look like, not just next year, Adam, but the years ahead. This is a pivotal time for the club to capitalize what they were able to just accomplish here over the last few months.
Yeah, I think with Martin Nash too, what's important to remember is what he built at York is also a good argument of, you see this York team now, they're in the playoffs. They, for a second straight year, they've really grown a lot as a club. When Martin Nash was there, it was a young group like this Vancouver team. It was not this side that it was now. And he was able to kind of mold it into what it was. Today, I wonder for Vancouver if they're going to stick with this model of developing young talent, of being the football factory, as it was termed. having someone, because that's what's impressed me with Martin Nash, that he's come in and with this team and he's continued to extract a lot of value out of these young players. Like the way Tierno Baz really stepped up. Matteo Campagna has been outstanding. Emmerich Fotzing, since he's come back from injury, hasn't missed a beat. Hugo Mbong turns out to be, one of the signings of the season. That's really encouraging because for all Vancouver have done in their first 3 years, the youth development, the players they've signed, that's been a plus. And the fact that Martin Nash has almost come in and seemed to unlock another level out of those youngsters, I'm encouraged. And I think what's really big about this potential of CONCACAF is what it could do for recruitment, because we so far have a limited sample size because it's only been forged a couple times in Cavalry, but both of those teams loaded up in their, respective CONCACAF runs. Like we saw some very good talent come to Forge. I mean, think of 22 when they brought in Hojabapur and Campbell and that coup. And then, that after that, you bring in the likes of Nimick, like some of these players that Forge have brought in. Meanwhile, Cavalry, you raid, Valor and you get Gutierrez, you get some other big players from around the league. I wonder who could look at this Vancouver project. Okay, I think with Martin Nash, the right young players, I come in and I'm in the midfield, or maybe I'm a winger, a center back, and I compare with Matteo Campagna. They could really make some good signings that would vault them forward. Because I think for Vancouver, they have a lot of work to do off the field in terms of what the future looks like. How can they get more crowds out there? What's the identity of this club? But I think it starts with on the pitch, because I think that's what's been nice to see with this run, is that people are finally paying attention to Vancouver FC because of success. So I think it shows that if they can build on that and really make some noise in the league, maybe another decent cup run, hold your own in CONCACAF, that will finally get some attention in this market.
AJR, look like a lot of traveling fans. Traveling fans.
It's still a commute. It is still a commute.
Yeah, I mean, just how they can get those people bought in on a week-to-week basis. BC, this is a great time to be a soccer fan in British Columbia, from the League One level onwards. And they just need to get people galvanized and understanding what that brand is all about. So as much as the ownership group says we want to bring in young players and develop them, what does it mean to be part of Vancouver FC? How does that differentiate from what very watchable Vancouver Whitecaps club that is, their reputation is being resuscitated in front of the public's eyes very quickly. So how can Vancouver do that? That is huge. The club maybe launched a little bit too soon. Everything happened a little bit too quickly, but now's the time to really dig in, invest, and from a cultural perspective, have a clear identity moving forward. So that's going to be all important here. And, is Martin Nash the guy that represents all those values? Potentially. I think they need some life. They need some excitement. They need some, and maybe CONCACAF Champions Cup. It happens so early in the season, so it's not a slam dunk, but it's something that really needs to be looked at here, because next year, World Cup year, it's going to be pivotal for all Canadian Premier League clubs to hit the ground running.
Well, I wonder if in any contracts that Vancouver FC players might sign, a World Cup ticket or two might be included. I don't know. I'm just speculating. That's where we're coming. That's a contract
bonus right there. Woo!
We know Martin Nash will be around in 2026 leading the academy. Will he be the permanent head coach? Whatever happens, that club deserves their flowers for an incredible TELUS Canadian Championship run. And we look forward to seeing who next year's darling of the tournament will be.